Welcome back to Animal Notebook. You know, if you've ever stopped dead in your tracks in the woods because you heard what sounded like a tiny, feathered machine gun, well, you've witnessed one of the most extreme physical feats in the animal kingdom. We're talking about a creature that routinely headbutts a solid tree trunk up to 20 times a second. I mean, just think about the sheer, violent mechanics of that for a second. If we tried that, the results would be absolutely catastrophic. But for this bird, it's literally just breakfast. Today on this explainer, we're focusing on the woodpecker, the woodland drummer. Evolution essentially decided to build a bird-shaped jackhammer, and then it completely over-engineered the suspension system to make the whole thing work. So we're going to break down exactly how they pull this off without, totally destroying their own brains. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. 1. Nature's built-in jackhammer. 2. The anti-concussion blueprint. 3. Pecking versus drumming. 4. The ecosystem engineer. 5. Diverse species and conservation. And 6. The woodland drummer FAQs. Section 1. Nature's built-in jackhammer. To truly appreciate these birds, we really have to start with the sheer biological problem of high-impact drilling. Hitting a tree with that much kinetic energy requires a very, very specific toolkit. First up is the beak. It's incredibly strong and perfectly chisel-shaped, designed exclusively for drilling into solid wood. And because they use it so much, it actually wears down and regrows constantly, kind of like our fingernails. But here's the thing. A strong chisel doesn't really matter if the machine holding it breaks, right? Section 2. The anti-concussion blueprint. Which brings us to a massive question. How exactly do you absorb all that shock? Well, the internal engineering here is just staggering. Woodpeckers have incredibly thick skull bones, sure, but they also have these flexible, shock-absorbing tissues sitting right between the base of their bill and their skull to cushion the impact. They also have heavily reinforced neck muscles, and their brains are actually quite small with a very tight fit inside the skull. That means there's literally no room for the brain to rattle around during an impact. Scientists and engineers are actually studying this exact anatomy right now to try and improve human safety equipment like helmets. And this brings us to the absolute crime and jewel of their safety system, the hyoid apparatus. This is an elongated bone that supports the tongue. But it doesn't just sit in the mouth. It extends and wraps completely around the back of the bird's skull. When a woodpecker drills, this bone acts quite literally like a structural safety belt, anchoring and cushioning the brain against catastrophic impact. It's an absolute marvel of evolution. But you can't drill effectively if you don't have a stable platform. Enter zygodactyl feet. Most birds have 3 toes forward and 1 back, while woodpeckers have 2 facing forward and 2 facing backward. This lets them grip vertical tree trunks with incredible strength. Plus, they use their stiff, highly reinforced tail feathers as a brace. It essentially forms a natural tripod with their feet, locking them perfectly in place to deliver maximum force. Section 3. Pecking versus drumming. Let's clear up a major behavioral misconception. When you hear that rapid-fire tapping in the woods, what are they actually doing? Well, the crucial point here is understanding the difference between pecking and drumming. Pecking is pure construction and foraging. They're actively drilling into bark to find insects or carving out a hole for a nest. Drumming, on the other hand, that's their version of singing. It's rhythmic, it's incredibly fast, and it's used purely to establish territory, warn off rivals, or attract meat. They aren't trying to break the wood when they drum. They just want to make the loudest, most resonant sound possible. Which, by the way, is exactly why you'll sometimes catch them drumming on metal gutters or street signs. The sound just travels so much farther. Section 4. The ecosystem engineer. Zooming out from the microbiology for a moment, let's look at how this extreme engineering benefits the entire woodland ecosystem. When it comes time to reproduce, both the male and female act as expert forest carpenters. They seek out dead or decaying trees, which are called snags, because the wood is a bit softer and already attracts the insects they eat. They excavate these deep cavities to lay their eggs on a little bed of wood chips. And when the chicks hatch, they're completely blind and featherless, relying entirely on the parents to bring them food for several weeks. But here's why this matters to the rest of the forest. Woodpeckers rarely reuse these nesting cavities, so once they abandon them, those precisely carved holes become vital real estate. Owls, bluebirds, wood ducks, bats, squirrels, and even pine martens rely heavily on these abandoned homes. Without woodpeckers doing all that heavy lifting and carpentry, many of these other species would really struggle to find safe shelter. They are, quite literally, ecosystem engineers. Section 5. Diverse species and conservation. So, just how wide-reaching is this family of forest carpenters? There are roughly 240 species of woodpeckers across the globe. They're found on almost every continent, thriving everywhere from lush rainforests to dry deserts where they nest inside giant cacti. Remarkably, they are entirely absent from only a few specific places: Australia, New Zealand, Madagascar, and the extreme polar regions. Section 6. The Woodland Drummer FAQs. To wrap up today's explainer, let's consolidate everything we've learned with a special Animal Notebook FAQ segment. 4 rapid-fire questions to test your woodpecker knowledge. Question 1, and it's probably the most common one out there. Do woodpeckers get headaches from all that pecking? The answer is no. As we learned, their shock-absorbing anatomy and that incredible hyoid bone totally protect them from pain and injury. However, there is a truly fascinating side effect. The sheer friction and kinetic energy actually cause their brain temperature to rise significantly. So while they don't get headaches, they do have to take short breaks just to let their heads cool down. How wild is that? Question 2. Just how fast can they operate? What is the maximum speed a woodpecker can peck? They can reach an astonishing 20 pecks per second. It is a dizzying mechanical feat that, again, makes them one of the most specialized birds on Earth. Moving to question 3, what makes up the majority of their diet? Because, all that energy has to come from somewhere, right? Well, they are the top-tier pest controllers of the forest. The primary target is insects, wood-boring grubs, ants, and beetle larvae hidden deep in the bark. To get them, they use tongues that can actually be up to 1/3 of their entire body length, complete with sticky saliva and barbed tips to fish them out. But they aren't strict insectivores. Some species drill neat rows of wells to drink tree sap, others eat fruits, and the famous acorn woodpecker creates massive granary trees to store literally thousands of acorns. And our final question for today's explainer: are any woodpeckers currently endangered? Unfortunately, yes. While the family as a whole is widespread, nearly 20 species are threatened today, primarily due to habitat loss and deforestation. Removing dead trees from forests actively removes their homes and food sources. The ivory-billed woodpecker, for instance, is considered critically endangered and possibly even extinct. But as a whole, the woodpecker remains an absolute masterpiece of adaptation. I want to leave you with this thought from the source material. Tiny birds repeatedly headbutting trees somehow became one of evolution's most successful design projects. Meanwhile, humans still lose arguments to automatic doors. So if nature can engineer a shock-absorbing system this perfect, what other impossible feats of design are hiding right in your own backyard? Thanks for joining this explainer on Animal Notebook, and stay curious.